So, okay, good. So we shall go ahead and start here. Well, good morning, Laura. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Good morning.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
good. So my name is Izaaz, and I'm going to be taking a look at sleep and how it affects memory and learning. So I
Okay.
want to start this presentation off by giving a little bit of background about me.
Okay.
And good. So I work in healthcare. It's something called nuclear medicine technologist, and it's medical imaging in a hospital. Um,
Mm-hmm.
most people have kind of heard about X-ray or CT, ultrasound, MRI. Nuclear medicine is kind of a different branch of that. There's lots of fine details about this position, but what I do essentially is inject people with radioactivity, and then I take some pictures. Another thing that I do is I'm actually a nuclear medicine instructor at BCIT. So what I do is I teach the content that I do in the hospital in the classroom. And so I have worked there since 2018 uh, in different roles. Some of them have been seeing the students out in the hospital. Other things have been teaching them how to use the equipment that we use. And because I've been doing teaching there for a little bit, I still consider myself to be new in teaching, and I wanted to improve and better myself. So I ended up taking some of these PIDP courses. This is my third one now, and I'm trying to do them slowly, one at a time, absorb whatever I can from the course, apply it, or at least as much as I'm able to. And I find that most of the things that I have learned so far, I am able to apply, which is great, because I can already feel myself becoming a bit of a stronger instructor. Not perfect yet, and I don't think any instructor is ever perfect, but kind of getting improving myself is kind of what I'm working towards. So why did I choose to study the effects of sleep on learning and memory? Um, honestly, it's because of an internal issue that I have. Um, I work 5 days a week in the hospital. I teach 3 days a week at BCIT. And yes, your math is correct. I work 8 days a week. Along with taking these PIDP courses, and my final most important role as a dad, I don't have much time to sit down, let alone sleep, especially with this little guy who's full of energy. So selfishly, I wanted to investigate the effects of sleep deprivation on myself and more importantly, kind of find out what I could do about it. And so during my time of researching this topic, I found it's very interesting that it's deemed acceptable to go without sleep or reduce sleep. Um, I hear all the time about students saying that, hey, I stayed up all night studying. I had to cram for this exam. And for everyone, it seems normal. And for some reason, I find that one problem that I have is I hate admitting that I'm tired. If my wife or a coworker asks if I'm tired, my go-to response seems to be, no, I'm good. I'm not tired. Um, I don't know. I think it's maybe something internal that I think that sleep is laziness or being tired or something like that, or a sign of weakness. Um, we won't get too far into the psychology of why I think like that. But I think it's important to recognize that sleep deprivation is something that's prominent in our society. In a TED talk I had a chance to watch, Dr. Matthew Carter, he describes three different schools that a prospective university student wants to attend. School number one has a lot of students that smoke and they talk about smoking and how they love smoking. School number two has lots of students that eat lots of junk food and keep talking about that all the time. And these schools sound kind of weird, right? If you were a student that was looking at these schools, you probably wouldn't want to go there. He brings up the example of school number three, where it's got a large number of students that look tired and exhausted. Um, and this third school describes pretty much every school that I've ever been to, um, and maybe even that you have. But for some reason, this school or schools are accepted as students being tired and exhausted. And while going through all this, it doesn't make sense to me because a lack of sleep can be as bad as smoking excessively and eating junk food excessively. And so it's not just me or university students who lack sleep. This was an infographic that was released by the government of Canada based on a study conducted by Statistics Canada. And I wanted to use this information because this is relevant to us who all live in Canada. And so what they saw that was at least 25% of adults don't get enough sleep, which is a minimum of 7 hours. You'll also notice here at the bottom that the quality of sleep is also a problem. And I can actually definitely understand why this might be happening. The cost of living is skyrocketing, interest rates are increasing, and the unknown is kind of keeping people up at night. But it's what do you do? And hopefully we'll get into that a little bit near the end. But before we get too far, we have to back up a little bit. First of all, what is sleep? Seems kind of obvious, right? You close your eyes, you fall asleep, maybe dream that you're a superhero, and then you wake up when your alarm goes off, ready to go about your day. Superficially, yes, that's what happens. There's a lot more that goes into the sleep, which we'll get into a little bit later. And is sleep important? Everyone says yes, because we all need to get our 7-8 hours of sleep. But if you think about it from an evolutionary aspect, animals and humans, we've evolved for survival of the fittest. Traits that are good and helpful and increase the fitness of an individual, they allow them to pass their genes on to the next generation and reproduce. Traits that are not helpful decrease the fitness of an animal, and it doesn't get passed on to the next generation. So if you think of sleep in this lens, when you're sleeping, you're very vulnerable. If someone or an animal comes to attack you, you can't run away, you can't escape. When you wake up the first thing in the morning, you're a little bit groggy and kind of getting rebalanced. So if you look at it from its surface, from its evolutionary aspect, everything points to sleep being detrimental to survival, except any animal that you can think of sleeps, whether it's a cat, a lion, a dog, anything like that, they need to sleep along with us. So why is it so important? So this quote at the beginning here, oh sleep, oh sleep, oh gentle, oh sleep, oh gentle sleep, nature's soft nurse. So I'm not much of a Broadway play person or seeing plays, but this is a quote from William Shakespeare from a play that he wrote, Henry IV, Part 2. The thing that amazes me that it was written over 400 years ago. And even back then, people knew that sleep was important and had healing and restorative effects on the body. Today, we've got all the science that kind of proves it and backs it up. That time, they didn't have so much, but they were able to still find its importance. And things that we have found out since then, it reduces your stress, it boosts your immune function, it lowers your blood pressure, gives you better mental health. This was the one that surprised me a lot. Um, People who get adequate amount of sleep are 17 times less likely to have mental problems or depression was a big one. Um, and the focus of our presentation today is looking at learning and memory because our course. And so learning and memory itself, there's kind of three different phases. So the first phase is encoding. And this is where you initially acquire the experience or the information that happens. The second phase is consolidation, where things that you're learning that are important, your brain kind of strengthens those connections and reorganize it in your brain so that you're able to access it or recall it easier when you need it. So that's all great, but how does sleep play into this? Well, here's the kind of the three steps: encoding, consolidation, and retrieval. And you can see down here that sleep is actually where everything gets reorganized. Yeah, so when you're awake, you're seeing something. So this man here, he's flipping over cards trying to find a matching pair, and he sees that this green and this gray one are matching, and he learns that. So when he goes to sleep that night, all the other ones that are red, he doesn't care about. His brain doesn't strengthen those connections. It leaves it weak. And he combines the matching pair in his head. So that next day, when he goes and repeats the task, he's able to recall or retrieve it, and he remembers what connection he did. Obviously, the type of learning that we do is more important and better, more valuable than flipping cards. But this is kind of the basic level of what's happening in those three phases. So what's happening inside of the brain? What's happening at a neurological level? It's a little bit of a complex picture, so I'm just going to go through it slowly, okay? So essentially, there's two kinds of memory: short-term memory, which is done in the hippocampus, and long-term memory, which is in the cortex. So originally, during the encoding process, when you first get that experience, so when this man is learning which cards are matching, you get some very strong bonds in the hippocampus, the short-term memory. His flipping over all the different sets, but the one that he wants to remember is strengthened. The long-term memory, it's not very strong yet. You can see there's weak little bonds for that matching set. Okay. The matching set is good, it's strong, that's what he wants to remember. When he goes to sleep, it gets transferred from the short-term memory of the hippocampus into the long-term memory of the cortex. And then what happens is reorganization and strengthening of those synapses in the brain that are important. And so the next morning, when he goes to retrieve it, it's already in his long-term memory. But as he gets new experiences in the day, there's new encoding that happens. And then when he goes to sleep, then you'll get some new reorganization of the brain, the synapses in the brain. Okay. So yeah, a little bit complicated, but I hope that made sense. And I'd be happy to go over that in the questions again here. And so this particular process was demonstrated in a study by the authors Feld and Diekelman. So rats, they were taught a food-related behavior. In other words, they were given a reward of food if they did a specific behavior. And they found that specific cells were activated in the hippocampus while they were learning the task. And when they fell asleep, that those same parts of the brain were firing again as the hippocampus was transferring into the long-term storage for the cortex. And this was not only observed in rats, this was also observed in other diagnostic imaging studies. So functional MRIs, what are called PET scans, and what are called EEGs, or electronic signals for the brain. They all showed the same areas of the brain lighting up when the person was awake as when they were asleep and consolidation was occurring. And so this is another study that was kind of performed by authors Jenkins and Dallenbach. And what they were shown is basically lots of nonsense syllables. So something like, I don't know, GUH, ga, or BAC, back. So they were given all these syllables and they had to remember them. One of the participants got no sleep and he was asked multiple times throughout the day if he could remember those 10 syllables he was given. The other participant had sleep at various times. And what you can notice from this graph was very early on, as soon as they were given the 10, both participants were able to remember all 10 nonsense syllables. But the participant who was able to sleep, he got a nap at 1 hour, and then he was asked to remember, and he remembered about 7 of them. Whereas the other one who was just kept awake, he remembered 4 or 5. And you can see over time, this participant, he got a nap at 1 hour. Another day he got a nap at 2 hours. Another day he got a nap at 4 hours. Another day he got a nap at 8 hours, and then meant to recall it after. And you can see over time that the one who was awake, his memory went down quite drastically. By the end, he's only able to remember 1 or 2 of the syllables, whereas the one who got the sleep was able to, even 8 hours later, remember 5 or 6 of them. And so this shows us that the consolidation is happening during that sleep process. And the one who was kept awake couldn't have that consolidation happening. Couldn't happen. There's also some fascinating research by Dr. Gina Poe, who's a top neuropsychologist, and she's using this to actually treat trauma. So one of the studies that she's involved in suggests to not let trauma victims go to sleep after an incident, but instead to keep them awake for 8 to 10 hours before letting them sleep. This way, as shown in this experiment, they'll forget some of the details, and it will allow for a decreased response to the trauma or symptoms such as PTSD. So as you can see, that sleep after learning is vital for that consolidation process to happen. Earlier, we had mentioned that sleep was a little bit more complicated than just these steps of falling asleep. We're going to get into a little bit details more. There's actually 4 different stages of sleep. We've got the non-REM or non-random eye movement stage 1, where you start to just fall asleep. Stage 2, your body starts to calm down a little bit, you're ready. Stage 3, your body gets even calmer. And then in stage 4, your brain actually becomes really active while your body is almost paralyzed. So throughout the day, you're overwhelmed with so many stimuli that you don't really need to retain. That when you were crossing the street, there was 12 seconds left. That a red car in front of you was stopped. It was in front of you for 3 red lights before they turned left. The brain doesn't need to really store all that information. So there's a deletion or pruning of this these non-important stimuli, which happens within kind of these different stages of sleep. And we need this to occur, just like we saw earlier, to be able to have better retrieval or recall the next day of the information we actually want or is important. During sleep, this sequence is not linear. You don't go from stage 1 to stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, have your dreams, and then go backwards until you wake up again. The stages cycle, but they go in a funny pattern. So you go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, stage 3 back to stage 2, and stage 2 to the REM sleep. And then you go back into stage 2. And that full cycle takes about 90 minutes. And you do this about 4 or 5 times a night. And one cycle is enough to show improvement in learning, but 5 cycles is so much more. And we've talked about how sleep is important after learning, but it's also important to sleep before learning. It helps you concentrate, be more focused, be more productive. So Dr. Matthew Walker, from an article I read from News and Health, he states that sleep prior to learning helps prepare your brain for the learning. When you initially learn things throughout the day, the memories are very raw and fragile, and it's easy to forget, especially when you can't devote brain power to it. And there's other studies where people have been taught a lot of things, and because they haven't had sleep, they can't really focus on anything. But it's interesting, if they were told that there's a reward for learning this specific thing, they are able to remember it because they're able to just focus on that one thing and ignore the rest of the other things they're being taught. Yeah, okay. And so tips for better sleeping. So stop using electronics 30 to 45 minutes before sleep. When you're using electronics, you're getting hit with dopamine, which keeps you awake. Okay. Dim the lights, which helps your brain relax. Don't have any caffeine or other stimulants in your system for 6 to 8 hours before you go to sleep. Don't eat too close to bedtime. Sleeping slows down your digestion, which can lead to indigestion, which keeps you up. And if you exercise 10 minutes or more a day, this can actually improve the quality of your sleep. These are things that I have to actually end up doing. And it's funny, I was a little bit hypocritical with this presentation. There was some work that I had to do at BCIT on Thursday night / Friday morning. I have to do some quality control on the machine that we use. And it's a long process. It takes about 12 hours, but I would usually split it up into 2-3 hour chunks throughout the month. This month, things didn't work out that way due to a series of unfortunate events. So I had to cram all 12 hours Thursday night. So I started at about 3:30 and finished at about 3:30 in the morning while working on this presentation. And I actually had to be at work at the hospital at 6 in the morning. So I ended up just staying up and finishing my presentation. But I could definitely feel the next morning, it was hard for me to focus. When people were asking me questions, I had to get them to repeat it a couple of times. And I just felt off the entire day. And as soon as I came home, I passed out for about 10 hours, and I was still a little bit groggy the next day because I hadn't made up that sleep. And I will definitely not be doing that again. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. These were just some of the references that I use, and I'll post these on the site. But I just want to give this chance. Well, take this opportunity first. Again, thank you, Laura, for joining me this morning, and also open up the floor for any questions that you might have.
Wow, so great presentation. Yeah, I learned a lot of different things about, when you explain about sleep, learning, and memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
How important is the phase of consolidation. But makes me think more than a question is a reflection or idea that I have, is how our brain works in a way that storage information better when there is no external stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like our brain needs a time just to put things in order. It's like a childcare. I'm going to use this. So childcare is a messy place surrounded by kids all around doing things. And when the childcare is closed, the staff put things, clean and storage things and clean things and get ready for the next day, right? So it's, in a way, it seems that our brain is working like that, to think about the next day or be ready for the next day, put things in their place, everything in their box. So
yeah, better organized. Yeah, I think that's a
yeah,
really good analogy there. Yeah.
it's a kind of
Yeah, and actually, part of the things that I kind of learned is that there's like a finite amount of space in your brain, right? If we didn't have this thing where we were doing the consolidation, we were strengthening some connections and getting rid of other things, we would kind of run out of space so that we can't learn new things. And if you the example that someone gave was like like a USB, one of the thumb drives. It can have your 2, 3, 8, whatever gigabytes of memory on there. But once it's full, you got to delete some stuff. You got to move some stuff somewhere else before you can start using it again. So yeah, childcare, this thumb drive, kind of a good analogy for the brain, right? And how we learn and have that process going.
I have a question for you because when you talk about the stages of sleep, right? You say that we move from MREM stages around four to 5 times at night.
Yeah.
So that means that because, I usually believe that you are in the stages 1, 2, or 3 for quite some time, and just only a portion of the sleep is in the REM sleep. It's a kind of the deepest one, right?
Yes, that's correct. So the times are actually here.
Okay.
I just didn't put it. So about 5 to 10 minutes to kind of fall asleep.
Yeah.
You're in stage 2 here for about 20 minutes. Stage 3 is about 15 to 20 minutes. And then REM sleep is about 20 minutes itself.
Okay. And I guess that the more you are in the REM sleep stage, the more rested you can feel the next day. But there is a limit of time that, I mean, when I analyze these, and I have, there is a couple of devices that can track your sleep, right? They said, for example, that I spend like around 2.5 hours or 3 hours in REM sleep. I was wondering, is that enough?
Well, if you're in REM sleep for 20 to 30 minutes each time, and you go to stage, if you cycle through 4 or 5 times a night, at the maximum you'd be in there 5 times 30 minutes, 150 minutes is 2.5 hours, which lines up exactly with what you kind of recorded there, right? But actually REM sleep is kind of where you have most of that consolidation happening because your brain is becoming more active. It's actually stage 2 where you are kind of where your body is getting more rested and doing the repairing portion of your sleep. Because where your brain is becoming more active is where we have that transition from the short-term storage from the hippocampus into the long-term storage of the cortex. Yeah. The rest of this is kind of preparing everything for that, as well as regenerating, getting rid of like neurotoxins in the brain, and yeah, getting your muscles healed, because there's other things that go on during sleep. Your body releases human growth hormone, which is where your muscles get bigger after you worked out for the day. Because your muscles don't get bigger while you're actually using them in the gym. They get bigger while you sleep, because your body is repairing it with the human growth hormone.
And you know what? There is a study that realized that babies grow at night.
Yeah.
This is when babies grow, right?
Yeah, because during the
They
day,
measure the babies before going to sleep.
yeah.
And then, well, I mean a couple of times, but they grow when they're sleeping, right?
Yeah.
And with these slides, I remember something that happens to me for a long time. I have 2 kids. And this is what I call, your parent, your father, as I said before. I remember this sentence I said that you have a mommy brain.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What is the mommy brain? The mommy brain is, you have to take care of a newborn and a baby. And probably the time that you spend in REM sleep is so minimum. And you just have a sleep deprivation for months. And at the end of, when you wake up in the morning, it's a way to say wake up in the morning, right? Because you spend the most of the night awake with the baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can see that it's hard to get focused. It's hard to do things. In fact, this is something I hear a lot for some of my friends. When they get pregnant, they always thought, oh, you know what? When I'm going to take care of the baby full time, and I'm going to invest my time that in study something. But the truth is they can't. I had the same feeling. I'm going to study something while I'm taking care of my baby. But it's almost impossible because you are tired all the time.
Yeah, no, I find that first year, and even a little bit longer for our son, because he was still waking up for nighttime feeds up to 18,
Yeah.
20 months.
Yeah.
And it's very disruptive. For us, I was fine getting up during the nighttime when he went onto the bottle. But at the very beginning with the breastfeeding, you're out of luck, right? You have to get up.
Yeah.
And it's I could see the effects on my wife, and then the lack of sleep also led to like physical things, right? She was having some
Absolutely.
hair loss, and then
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's painful. So when you do get to sleep, if you move a little bit, and the breast starts to hurt or something like that, right? And yeah, so it was the first 18, 20 months where it was very difficult for her to fall asleep. Um, Even though she had stopped breastfeeding, your brain is kind of tuned when a baby cries, makes a noise, you
Yeah,
kind of startle and get up, right?
that's right.
Yeah, even like our even this our next door neighbor, sometimes when our windows are open, their windows are open, we can hear their kid yell and crying, and we can kind of get up too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I used to say that, I used to sleep around 6, 7 hours. I wish I could sleep more, but sometimes I can't. But I used to say that if in the worst case scenario, if I can, the length of the sleep that my body needs to be ready for the next day at minimum is 3 hours. If I don't have this consistent 3 hours, not interrupting time for sleeping,
Yeah.
I cannot do. I'm off the next day. So yeah, it's like you need three. I need at least 3 hours of not interrupting sleep to be ready for the next day. The rest is if I can have 8 or 7, 8 hours, that's perfect. That's great. That's what I need. But if for any reason I cannot do this kind of 7 hours, a minimum has to be 3.
3, yeah, which is like about two full cycles, right?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so you spend an hour or hour and a half kind of in non-REM sleep, and then kind of repair your brain, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. Okay, so you kind of timed it to getting to about 3 hours or so.
It's better if we can have more, of course, but sometimes it's what it is, especially if you have kids.
Yeah, yeah. How old are your kids now?
My kids are 7 and 9, but my oldest kid had a sleep problem for many, many years, and he's luckily sleeping better since a year ago.
Okay.
But he woke up every single day around 2 a.m., 1:30 a.m., 2 a.m. or so. So it was really, really hard for the whole family, adjust to this, every single day at night. You have like a baby, right? You have to wake up and be with him. But he's getting better. He's definitely getting better.
That's good. So you get your full 7 hours there then, right?
Yeah, now I'm happy because I can have these 7 hours. But for many years was around 3 hours and a half of sleep. Because he fall asleep again after waking up, but I couldn't. So at the end, my son have a couple of good sleep hours, and I always have 3 or 3.5.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I just try to fix the video, but it seems that something is not okay. I just try so hardly to connect because but now is not working at all. So
not a problem. There's only I'm only allowed 2 more minutes for this meeting anyways.
Okay, well,
I think
sounds good.
it worked out. But yeah, thank you again for joining me this morning, Laura. It's
My
nice
pleasure.
to talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I learned quite a lot, especially about when you talk about the hippocampus and the cortex and how the information is stored.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's great.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you learned, and I just want to say good luck on the rest of your journey there, and hopefully things work out for this course. And
is that kind of your last signature? I mean, signature subject. So you have more subjects, or you're almost done?
Oh no, this was just my 3rd course. I think I have 7 or 8 more to go.
Yeah.
So maybe by the end of next year, I'll be done.
Yeah. I think sometimes some of subjects are let's say kind of easy to achieve, but require a lot of work, a lot of assignments.
Yeah.
Some of them are easier, definitely, but yeah, I'm just almost finishing. I'm probably need to complete 3 more.
Okay.
And I'm done.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. What are you hoping to use this for? Is it like for a teaching thing, or is it more personal stuff?
There is a little bit of both. I'm working as an employment specialist, but I wanted to transition in as instructional designer.
Okay.
So it's related to education, of course, but it's also close to what I'm doing right now in some way. So I just hope to transition in gradually to instructional design.
Okay, good. Good to hear. Good luck with that, and hopefully you do that maybe by the end of this year, right?
Yeah, or the beginning of next year,
Exactly.
because I'm still, super busy single mom.